Hey everybody, I'm here to do the lecture on negotiations. I have with me over here my coworker. What is it, baby? Her name is Vegas, and she is very spoiled. She is a rescue, and I've had her about 3 years. She's about 4 years old though, and she's a full-blooded pit bull. You want to do a trick? Look, can you speak? Can you speak? Can you speak? Speak. Speak. Yeah, okay. All right. So, a little bit of entertainment. Anyway, so if you are going to follow along with me on this presentation, you'll have to go to your As You Learn and go down to the week of 316. And you'll see right here it says fact-based negotiations. So that is actually the PowerPoint that I'm going to lecture off of. I'm not going to go through all of these slides because there's like 50 of them. There's 47. And, well, I don't think you need all this information. You can definitely read it if you would like. So, all right. So here we go. So fact-based negotiations. Kind of like when I told you guys before that I think everybody has been in some kind of negotiation at some point. You definitely try to talk your parents into something, or you've bought a car, or we are in the process of selling our house and buying a new one. Well, not a new one, it's my dad's property. But so I think that everybody at some point has been into some kind of negotiation. So I think it's really important that within your groups that you really look at whose role is what on the team. Sometimes, of course, you guys are only in threes, but sometimes you have a big team. You may have, 5 or 6 people in the negotiation. You might have an IT guy. You might have your accounting person to talk about, terms of payments. You may have, the operations guy to tell them what you need specifically for whatever it is that you're purchasing. And there's no telling how many people you may have in there. And most of the time, everybody kind of has a role. Since you guys only have 3 people per team, you may have to do multiple roles, but try to pick who is good at what. By this point, you've already have gotten or will get very soon the information that I sent out to each person, the buyer and the seller. Please remember not to share that information with the buyer or the seller. If you're a buyer, don't share it with the seller or another buyer team. It's important that you guys do this on your own, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it. So next thing you're going to have to do is obviously figure out a strategy. Are you going to go in? Are you going to play hardball? Are you going to try to play the nice guy? Last semester we had some really interesting strategies. Since you guys won't be necessarily doing this face-to-face, we had one team that had pictures of the other team taped on their shirts. It was really funny. There's been all kinds of things. Of course, you wouldn't do that in real negotiation, but it was pretty funny. It kind of caught them off guard, and you know what? That was part of their strategy. So those are the things that you kind of need to think about. How am I going to get these people off guard? How am I going to get what I want, but at the same time, work with them and know what they want as well? So, so then of course, you plan and conduct your negotiations, and then they get an award, and that means a contract, and then you document all the benefits. So, in this instance, we're only going to go to plan and conduct negotiations. We're not necessarily going to drop a contract or anything. Like I said before, your deliverable for this is literally just a Word document with each point of the 12 points that you need to negotiate for and just what you agreed to. So, let's go on. Okay. First, you have to determine whether a negotiation is necessary. You go into Walmart, you buy something. No, of course not. Although I'd like to negotiate sometimes. You go into maybe a flea market. Yeah, absolutely, you can negotiate. Go into a car dealership. Yes, negotiate. So those are the kind of things you have to think about. So, other things you have to think about are there a lot of non-price issues involved? So if you think about buying a car, let's think about that for a minute. So non-price issues. It's not really in the overall price of the vehicle, but what about my maintenance? Can I get free oil changes? Can I get free maintenance on my car for 3 years? A warranty. It's not necessarily things that you have to pay for up front, but it's things that you want to think about. Is the contract value large? So if it's a large contract or a large commodity that you're trying to buy, absolutely I would have a contract. Why? Because that protects you and it protects the other person as well. Are technical requirements complex? If they are complex, then obviously you want a contract because you probably need to spell out those very specific specifications. Does a contract involve plant and equipment? So this means like a tooling charge, anything like that. Does it involve a partnership? So is this a negotiation where you need to be with your partner to figure out exactly what you want to purchase or what you want to buy, or how you want to sell something? Will the supplier be performing value-added functions? So does that mean you're just going to buy something from them and you're done? Or is this going to be a strategic partnership where they're going to help you help them? And of course, will the contract have high risk and high uncertainty? So I think about that in the terms of, say, buying gold, for example, because the price fluctuates so much. Is that something that you need to put in your contract? Do you need to cap it? Do you need to put a ceiling or a floor on that particular price? So, I'm going to skip this slide. You can read through that if you would like. Of course, this is about fact-based supplier negotiations. You're not always going to have facts on things, on other people or other companies. And really what I gave you was not a whole lot, but it was something so that you'll be able to do this exercise. But typically you would do exactly what I asked you to do as far as like sourcing and things. So your external profile and sourcing document or paper that you wrote me, and I will be grading those as soon as possible. But so those kind of get you to where you need to be, because you already know by doing those that the price of gold is this, or microprocessors only have very specific suppliers. So you already know that. You know that you're limited. So that was part of why we kind of wanted you to do that, to kind of set you up for this. So step one on your negotiation is obviously create a strategy. Organize your facts. Look at what I've given you. Look and see if that's something that, do you have everything you can work with? And you should, by the way. If you don't, you're going to have to make up some stuff. And that's okay. That's perfectly okay, because I didn't give you everything. I gave you what you needed, but there are going to be some facts that you're going to have to make up as you go. And that's perfectly okay. Of course, in a real life scenario, you can't make up things in your head, so don't do that. Okay, so consider internal and supplier levers. So what kind of power do they have? Discuss internal and potential supplier issues to address. So that would mean, can they handle the volume that we're trying to give them? Things like that. Define your approach. I'm going to let you read through that. Plan your negotiations. and actually we're going to go through all these, and execute negotiations and develop a contract. So on step 1, the first thing, what information do I need to negotiate effectively? What leverage will help me to reach my objective during negotiations, and what leverage will the suppliers be using? So what do you think the supplier might, I don't want to say hold against you, but use as leverage? So hold against you. It's good to think about that, because then you can kind of anticipate when you go in that maybe that supplier knows that what you have is very technical. Maybe they know that you're the only person that can make it. These are things that you think about. And you need to know that going in, because that's going to put maybe the ball in their court. You never know. I'm just making this up, but I'm trying to give you a good example. Okay, so sweet tea, have to have this. So the negotiation process, this is kind of like a triangle that, know exactly what you want and try to know exactly what they want, and then propose an action in a way that both of you can accept. And I can tell you that doesn't always happen. You may not know what they want. You may go in there thinking but it doesn't always happen that way. Trust me. It's always interesting in negotiations when you go in to actually negotiate with the other party and you think one way and that person totally thinks a different way, and you almost have to change your way of thinking. And sometimes that's hard. We're very focused people on how we think, and it's hard sometimes to think outside the box. So know exactly what you want. Determine and formalize specific goals and objectives. And I've said this before you walk in there to do any kind of negotiation, you need to do your homework before you get in there. This is knowing exactly what you want. This helps to obviously focus the group as a whole and minimize distractions, because if you know what you want, then you don't have to step away and keep stepping away to talk about it privately. And it's okay to do that sometimes. It totally is, especially if you walk in there and the other team completely blindsides you. And this has happened in negotiations before. And if you ever want to step away and take a moment, that's perfectly fine with me. You just need to let us know, and we'll be hanging on and waiting on you. So I would write it down, what you want, because that way you can look at it while you're conducting your negotiations. That's just obvious. And I would suggest writing it down so everybody on the team knows that is the main objective, so everybody can see it. And that way it's obviously more clearly defined. Know exactly what they want. This one's a little bit more tricky because you can't read people's minds, right? It's hard to do that. So attempt to discern other parties' likely needs and wants. Well, we all know that everybody wants to make money, okay? They want to sell it for as high as they can. You want to buy it for as low as you can. So this is where you're going to have to meet in the middle. Be aware of expecting the other party to think in the same way you do. I just talked about that. It does not always happen. Out of the negotiations that I've been involved with, there were several times that they didn't even know, they just weren't on the same page as I was either. That was a little trickier to navigate. So ask open-ended questions to confirm or counter assumptions. So I wouldn't come in there and say, if they say, hey, I want $20, I wouldn't come in there and say, hey, would you do 25? Or whatever. I would say, what price are you expecting to get? Or, what price are you expecting us to sell at? That's kind of like a more open-ended question, because then the answers can be infinite, right? Of course, you don't want them to be, but you know what I mean. So propose action in a way they can accept. So when you go in there, I know some of you, I'm saying this because I do this with car dealerships. Can't help myself. I know that some of you are going to want to play hardball. But if you go into a negotiation and you have this air about you that's, I'm better than you, I'm holier than thou, you're going to do what I want you to do, it's not going to go good. It's just not going to do well for you. It might. I doubt it. And the reason why I say that is because if somebody approaches me and they treat me like that, I'm just not going to talk to them. I mean, that's just how I think. And that happens in negotiations as well. And it happens a lot. So you have to remain fair and reasonable and, try to address each other's issues. It always says on here to address their needs first. And that's fine. But you have to know that you have needs as well. So I think that you should work together to come to a conclusion. Okay. So negotiation strategy win-win. I'm not going to go over all of them, because I think that you guys can read it, and I'm trying to keep this as short as possible so that you guys actually will watch it. You can look through this as well. And this is absolutely Porter's 5 Forces. This is part of your, hey baby, this is part of your external profile. So of course you have barriers, suppliers, industry, customers, substitutes. So all of those are really important for you to look at when negotiations come into play. So yes, I'm going through some of this because I don't think it's important. So life cycle. It's a good idea to talk about your life cycle. Because, if you're doing contracts, okay, so if you're doing a short-term contract, that's probably not such a big issue. But if you're doing really long-term contracts, like 5, and I've seen 10 years, those are really important. You need to talk about your life cycle and how long that you think this product is going to last, and how, if you're going to have to modify any over time. Think about... This is a crazy example, but think about toothpaste. I always get this one kind, and I hate it when they change it, because then I have to get used to another one. It makes me mad. Like, I'm very particular about my toothpaste. So, I mean, those are things that you have to think about. So, let's talk about this for a second. So, capacity effects. Available capacity, I'm just going to read this, can also be a major determinant of supplier relationship, pricing, and receptiveness. Now, which supplier, A or B, do you think is going to be more apt to take your business? Somebody who's at 90% or somebody who's at 60%? I'm going to say 60, because they have the room to grow. They have the capacity to take care of what you need. They want to utilize as much as they can, because I'm sure you've heard this before, then they're able to spread more capital over everything that they're doing. So it actually lowers the cost for them. So obviously supplier A is going to be more hungry to get your business than supplier B. Supplier B may not even be able to handle what you're trying to give. So that's absolutely going to affect your pricing strategy and how you're going to handle that. Okay. So now you're going to define your negotiation approach. So what are key messages? What type of relationships are you expecting to have going forward? I mean, is this going to be a very strategic relationship? Or is it, hey, I'm just going to buy this stuff off you. We really don't need anything else. This is how it's going to be. And what is the maximum value we expect to achieve through these negotiations? Meaning, how's it going to help us? How's it going to help them? right? And what is the very least that we're willing to agree to? So you have to think about that too. So as a buyer or a supplier, you have to think, what is the least amount of money I can spend to purchase, or I can spend to make so they can buy this. So you have to figure those things out. And also, what if we can't meet our objectives during negotiations? I said this before in the video that I posted about just the basic rules of this. It does not mean that you fail if you do not come to a negotiation. If you can't come to an agreement on negotiations. Some people don't. That's very common. So if you can't, then you can say that you just agree to disagree. So, define negotiation approach. Lastly, and I've already said this, it doesn't matter if you do not come to an agreement. Again, that's kind of the way some of them go. I'm not going to go through that. It's a lot of stuff to talk about. Nor, you see my dog here, she's trying to root me off my chair. All right. So these are some things that we can talk about. So negotiation boundaries. So you look at your wants, your needs, and your alternatives. So obviously, your needs, that means what price do I need? That means what specifications do I need? What's my least acceptable solution, or LAS? What is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement? And they call that BATNA, which is just weird. Anyway, I don't like how they say that. So you really need to think about your boundaries. What's the maximum supportable solution? Supportable, yeah. Objective, the altogether best proposal based on overall benefits and variability of alternative. So here's kind of an example of each of these. I'm going to let you she just took my seat. I'm going to kind of let you guys read through them. That's a lot to cover. I'm not going to read all of those. So I do want to talk about, though, the BATNA. So it may involve walking away. Have any of y'all ever been in a negotiation where you did walk away? I guarantee you that you have. It may not be when you're trying to buy a car, which I have done several times. Several times. But it could be when you're trying to negotiate with a partner or mom and dad or whoever that you just couldn't come to an agreement, so you just get aggravated and you just walk away. Could prolong a stalemate, which means you just can't, you need to come to an agreement, but you just can't. You can approach another buyer or seller. You can make something in-house or outsource. Some things may involve going to court rather than settling. This is like true with divorces and things like that. Forming a different alliance. So think about other ways that you can work together, or people can work with you, or go on a strike. So I'm going to let you guys kind of read through these. To me, they're not necessarily that important, but I do want you to know that sometimes a negotiation will involve you just walking away. Kind of like I said before, if somebody's really being rude to me, I'm not going to sit there and take that. I'm probably going to just walk away, because sometimes it's better to do that than saying what you think. So keep that in mind. I will say, though, in a professional setting, which you guys will be in, try not to walk away. Don't just get up and leave. It's really unprofessional. Just say that you and your team need a little bit of time to talk. That's absolutely acceptable and very professional. But in real life, Not in the business sense, but in real life, if you need to walk away, that's perfectly okay. So, this is a slide that I think you guys will find the most interesting, because what are some common negotiation topics? These are like part of your 12 that you can use. So remember, it's not just about price and cost, right? There's several other things that you have to think about. Delivery schedules, requirements, product and service quality levels, and these are things you may have to make up. If you're part of Six Sigma, Lean Sigma, then your quality is very, very high. That would probably mean a premium price. Technology support and assistance. Payment terms. How long do I have to pay you as a company? Contract volumes and assurances. So acceptable ranges. Liability, intellectual property protection, warranties, capacity commitments. Am I going to get everything that I'm asking from you? Mode of transportation responsibilities. So where is my product coming from? Is it coming from overseas? Is it coming from across the street? Is it coming from another state in America? Where is it coming from? And what's my liabilities according to that? Because obviously you're going to have more risk if you're bringing something from overseas. Non-performance penalties, service level agreements, performance measures. What if I hire you as a supplier and you don't supply what I need in the time frame that I need? What's going to be your penalty? I can tell you from experience that where you don't have penalties in place for that, it starts to be a problem very quickly. And most of the time, money talks when that happens. And that same goes for the buyer. If you're buying something from the seller and you don't pay when you're supposed to, what's your penalty going to be? It's important that you think about those that part of the contracts. Resolution mechanisms for contract disputes. So if you have a problem with a contract, what are you going to do to be able to negate that dispute? Okay. So obviously step 3 is to plan the negotiation. I'm going to talk about this just a little bit. Obviously, this is an online class and we will not be meeting face to face. When do you think it's important that you should meet face to face? I have certain things that I think. Now, I'm not going to say if they're right or wrong, but I'll tell you these are my thoughts. I think it's important to meet each other at least one time. Whether that means somebody flies somewhere, I really do think it's important. The reason why I think that is because, especially if you are trying to have a good relationship with these buyers, you really, really need to meet face to face. I think there's something lost sometimes in translation if you don't see each other. So that's just my 2 cents worth on that. It doesn't always work, obviously, for all kinds of reasons that come into effect in the supply chain. Obviously, the coronavirus right now is a big play, and this may date this video. I hope to use this again, but we're always going to be talking about this probably from now on. It's a huge disruption in supply chain, which will let you know how important it is. So, but the biggest thing is what role will each team member play during those negotiations. So, I think it's important to kind of get each person's role. And this is kind of what this next slide is talking about. Who's the team leader? What is their authority? Who is the lead negotiator? Why is each member of the team participating? What is their role? And I do expect everybody to participate some. And I do think it's really important. I'm going to reiterate this again, that you have one person to write down everything that you're saying, because 3 people will walk out there in your team, and one of you will get one thing, one of you gets another. And it's okay for that person to say, oh, hold on a minute, I need to write that down. It's perfectly acceptable, and I suggest you do that. So these are just kind of some of the roles and responsibilities. Obviously, people are going to have to double up on some of these because, we only have 3 people in each team. So I'm just going to let you read through that. Going to let you read through that as well. So it's talking about location, duration, where to sit in negotiations. Well, it depends on where you're at, because if you're in a really tiny room, you may not be able to sit anywhere. You have to sit side by side. Okay, so next, I think this is really important for me to point out to you guys. So when you plan a negotiation, have an agenda and use it. It's really important, really, really important that you go in there and you have very specific things that you're going to talk about. You can have them in any order that you want to, but I suggest that you write everything down. And that's perfectly okay, because it makes you structure the meeting. I don't know if any of y'all have ever been in a meeting in a professional setting, but people start going off topic, or they start talking to each other, and it's like it goes so far away from what you're trying to accomplish. That's when you need to reel it in. And I have seen people that are so good at that. And it's a really important skill to have, because quite frankly, you're not wasting people's time. Because I know, like, when I go into a meeting, a lot of times, I'm being called from my regular duties that I have to do. And then I'm going to have to stay that much later to get everything finished. So people's time is precious, and you need to treat every meeting that way. So if you don't have an agenda, it's like I have to have an agenda when I talk, because I'm very bad to go off topic. I think I do better when there's not a lot of students, because, well, we're just not talking back and forth. But I like that it's fun. But anyway, but it's really important to have an agenda so that you stay on point. And I'm going to let you guys kind of read through that. So, resolving conflict. So, these are some of the things you may have to deal with. Lack of response. What if you talk to people and they just don't even say anything? Well, that's where your open-ended questions are really going to help you out. A disagreement. So, I like when I have a disagreement with somebody that I can show them proof of what I'm saying and what I'm trying to get my point across. My boss once told me that, I think I asked for some money for something. I can't remember what it was, but I actually did a SWOT analysis. And that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. You've probably heard that before. But I actually conducted a SWOT analysis myself and handed it to him. And guess what? I got the money, because there was no way he could dispute what I was saying to him. It works very well. Skepticism. Again, you can offer proof. Try to avoid sarcasm. That's really hard for me. But try to. Personality clash. I want to talk about this for a second, because I had a plumber come over the other day, and I totally had a personality clash with this guy. But who had the power at that point? Well, he did, because I needed something fixed. So when you're like that, you just kind of be quiet. Just don't say anything to antagonize or try to judge. It's really hard to do that. You can acknowledge your feelings, but you can make the point too. But in this case, it wasn't really necessary. I just needed something fixed, and I just kept my mouth shut. He had a skill that I didn't have. So here are some negotiating tactics. I'm going to let you guys read through those. I love this negotiation style. So, I don't know if any of y'all have ever gotten in a fight with your significant other, but it's really not. Sometimes what makes me mad is not necessarily his words, but the tone of voice he uses. The same thing goes on in negotiations. Exactly the same thing. It's not necessarily your words, but how you're saying it. Are you saying it with a smile? Or are you saying it with this, terrible look on your face? It makes a difference. Body language can just say so much about how somebody is feeling. And you can tell when somebody's nervous. I had a negotiation last semester where the other team came in just powerhouse. And I could tell the other team was so blown out of the water, nervous, taken aback, and I just watched. So, think about that when you're conducting negotiations. So it makes a huge difference. Okay, so here's execute negotiations. This only really just talks about like once you do the negotiation. I'm going to let you guys kind of read through these as well. The first step obviously should be all the objectives should be clearly communicated, as well as addressing any points for clarification. So I'm just going to say this because I have negotiated with people from China and other people that, we just had language barriers. They spoke good English, not great. And sometimes I couldn't really necessarily understand what they were saying. In that point in time in a negotiation or on a phone call, anything, make sure that you tell them to clarify what they are saying. Say, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that until you understand? Can you spell that out for me? Because you never know when you are agreeing to something that you don't know you just agreed to. So you have to really keep that in mind when speaking to people in other countries that have other languages. Don't ever say, yeah, okay, and be mindful of their culture as well, because in dealing with China, they consider it rude to tell people no. So when I ask them something to do and they say, I say, hey, can you do this? Yes, we can do that. Of course we can. But they really couldn't. So you really have to follow up with that. But again, they think it's really rude to say no. So you have to think about that as well. So I'm going to let you guys read through this because I think I've kind of talked about this. Remember that if any time that we need to do like another negotiation, say if you can't come to an agreement, but you're almost there and maybe somebody has to go, we're out of time for some reason, we can clearly go back and do a second round of negotiation. Because quite frankly, in real life, there are several. It's not just a one and done most of the time, especially if it's big. So that's perfectly okay too. I'm going to let you read through the rest of this because I think that you guys can understand this by just reading. So, and obviously we're not going to come up to a contract. I've told you what your deliverable is. So anyway, I hope that this wasn't too long, and I hope that you enjoyed talking about this, at least getting a little bit of insight to what I'm trying to teach you during this exercise. So have a good day, and enjoy the weather.